And yet another video about Baby Yoda's Jedi cloak. This time I am just beginning to make the brown version, so I thought I would just take a little break and show this phase of sewing. And what we're doing is making the same cloak that he has here in black, but we're doing it in brown flannel this time. I've never worked with flannel before. I'm using the zigzag scissors. I believe flannel will fray. We'll see what happens. This one is fleece, which does not fray. There are some slight modifications this time with the hood. It's going to be a little smaller, and hopefully my hemming will be better this time. But anyway, so I had this pattern piece, and all I did was cut out my 2 pieces of flannel. These are 2 pieces here, and then I sewed together just these shoulder parts here, which you can see here. Now this, I'm just trying to figure out some things about this. I don't know about this little notch here, but yeah, just sew together the shoulder parts. Then what you do is you flip it. Oh my gosh, this is not easy to do with one hand. Okay, now it's right side out. And here we have the sleeve pattern, which needs to be doubled over, so then you end up with this, which I've got all these little bits of thread all over the floor here. Yeah, so like this, and then what you do is you're gonna sew right side up on this, and then this doesn't really have a right side or wrong side, but in theory it would be right side down. So you have the right sides touching here together, like the inside of the sandwich. And can't really do this with one hand, but then you're gonna sew around. So as you're sewing, you have to kind of pull this over, because yeah, you have like opposite curves, but they have to meet up here. And then when that's all sewed down, then you fold it out, and then you're gonna have a nice looking set sleeve. Oh my gosh, I really should probably sweep the floor here first, because there's so many little bits of thread. Anyway, so I thought I would just show that. And now back to work. All right, so I sewed the sleeve to the other piece of the cloak, right sides together on the inside here, and you just kind of push and pull, get the curves to line up there, and then you can see you have a nice clean line for the seam of the sleeve. And then this is the inside of it, where you can see all the seam allowance here. And then, of course, you would set the other sleeve. And, okay, I only have one hand, so it's kind of hard to show this. Then this is inside out, and you would stitch across here and down here, and then turn the whole thing right side out. But yeah, I thought I would just show that sleeve, how that works, how you sew that. And all right, getting ready to do the second one. All right, here it is with the other sleeve sewn on. I did it the same way, right side to right side, and then, I mean, right meaning correct side to correct side of the fabric. If you had a print, say a print fabric with the print on one side but not the other, you'd have to make sure that you're sewing it correctly together. in this case, my sleeve is the same on front and back, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, and then so around the curve, and now I've got 2 sleeve sets, and here is the opening for the neck in the middle. And now we will continue the process, which is to have, I mean, obviously I will line this up better, but have it inside out, and then we're gonna sew along here and then down the side. I marked the lines here just so you can see where I'm gonna sew and down. I didn't leave that much seam allowance here. That was probably stupid, but whatever, we'll see what happens. And here it is. I sewed the sides and then turned it right side out. So it looks pretty good, I gotta say. I still have to do the bottom hem, I gotta do the sleeve hems, attach the hood, all kinds of things. But then the next step here, I guess I'm going to just cut the front in half here. Not the back, that stays in one piece, but the front gets cut in half. I've marked the center here. I do sometimes just spot check and measure because you might think you can eyeball the center of this, but I mean, if you're anything like me, it will not really be the center. So, and then incidentally, I mark with this liquid chalk, which I don't think it's really for sewing. I got it for another purpose, but I figure why not? It's easy to draw with on the fabric, and then it dries, and then later you can pretty much just brush it off. So yeah, I mean, versus just regular chalk, which people use to sew with. I like this because it is, to me, easier to apply, just like a marker. It's kind of wet when it goes on. And here it is. I cut down the middle of the front. So now you can see we almost have a sort of little cardigan button-up sweater or something like that. But we still have the hood to add and the hemming to do and Velcro to add. This is the hood piece I'm about to sew. I'm going to sew just along the top and the back. All right, I sewed the hood, and I did mention in one of my other videos that you can use this freezer paper and iron it down as pattern. And I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but you can hear that it was kind of stuck because the wax on the back melts when you iron it, but then you can peel it right off. It doesn't leave any residue. So that's a nice thing to do instead of tracing onto the fabric. And here is our hood piece that we turned right side out. It still has to be hemmed. Now here's something a little bit unusual. Usually you would sew right side to right side, but in the case of the hood, I've decided to go wrong side to wrong side. So I'm gonna sew it around like this. And then yeah, this hopefully will end right where that ends, yada yada. But the reason for that, here, do you want to show? You want to model this? Yes. Okay, come here. Now, you can see, maybe, that, yeah, here's, you can see the seam allowance because I did it the other way. Usually you would want that on the inside and you would want the outside clean. But since this hood kind of comes down, it hangs down, you don't see that seam allowance there. And so it is open because it's a Jedi cloak, and you can see into here. So if I had that seam allowance on the inside, it would actually be more visible than putting it on the outside. Anyway, that's just something that I learned by doing it the wrong way one time. And yeah, you can just see right in there. So actually you want it to be clean on the interior of the garment. One thing I forgot to mention is that you will want to cut a slit in your hood pattern for the ear opening, where his ear is going to go through. And so while this is still stuck down, you might want to trace that line. And then what I do is just fold this and make sure the line is symmetrical, and then you're just gonna snip it. Now, this one is made out of fleece that does not fray, and like I said, this is flannel that does fray. So I might have to do a zigzag stitch around this or something, otherwise when I cut this, the raw edges might start unraveling over time. Like I said, I have never worked with flannel before, but I'm finding that using the zigzag scissors or pinking shears, it's not fraying at all where I cut it, which is nice. And oh, you can see I sewed the hood on. So yeah, this is the inside of the garment, but this seam is clean because I put the seam on the outside there. What was I? Oh yeah, and I know I had heard that people fringe fabric like this front. When I slit the front up the middle, I did not use the zigzag scissors, and so what I did was I just grabbed and pulled, and I've tried that on other fabrics and I didn't get that fringe effect, but here I did. See if this can focus. Yeah, and on this side it's quite a major fringe there. I just like grabbed and pulled and all this came out. I guess the weave of the fabric or whatever, just pulled these pieces out, leaving this. Now I'm not sure if I want that effect, but I was just thinking about hemming and always thinking about, can I avoid hemming something? But yeah, and you can also see that this hood came out further than this. So if I'm going to do one hem going around the whole thing, then perhaps I'll trim this back a bit. I'm still not sure, because like I said in another video, if I hem this back, then I'm going to lose a lot of fabric. And you can see in the front, this is hemmed just barely here, and it's still, I mean, it's supposed to be open. In the pictures of Jedi, they really just have the front totally open, so that's fine, but